Welcome to Public Forum, a community outreach program produced at North Idaho College on the shores of Lake Coeur d'Alene. Featuring guests from around the globe addressing a wide variety of subjects, Public Forum serves to educate and enlighten. Please join host and moderator, political scientist Tony Stewart, in welcoming today's guest.
We've been doing a 3-week series on women's issues that was preceded by a 2-week series on male spirituality. And in the last 2 weeks, we dealt with the Women's Center in Coeur d'Alene, and today we're so pleased to have 2 guests from Planned Parenthood of the Inland Northwest. And this is the oldest organization of its kind in the United States. And first of all, I welcome to the program C.J. Gribble. She is the CEO of Planned Parenthood located in Spokane, Washington. C.J., welcome to the program. We're so pleased to have you here.
Thank you for having us. We're very excited to be here.
And equally pleased to have Carrie Miller, who is the volunteer coordinator of Planned Parenthood of the Inland Northwest. And Carrie, I've known a long time, and it's nice to have you on our program, and thank you for being here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
As always, I'm pleased to have our panelist, Janelle Burke, who's an attorney in the state of Idaho, and next to her is Erna Reinhardt, who's Director of Public Relations at North Idaho College, and Janelle will commence today's questioning.
My first question will be for you, CJ, and it has to do with your organization and how it was founded and why. Now, I know that could take all of our program, but just please tell us a little bit about the national organization, how it was founded, and then also a little bit about the organization here in the Inland Northwest.
You bet, be happy to. Planned Parenthood Federation of America is the outgrowth of Margaret Sanger's first birth control clinic in New York City in 1916. Where she did that original work and of course went to jail because the laws of the time regarding obscenity didn't allow you to even talk about the rhythm method. That was considered obscene. She went to jail for bringing diaphragms into the country. So there were barrier methods available to women. So we are an outgrowth of that original first clinic, and we are the oldest and largest reproductive health care system in the United States. We estimate that we see 1 out of 4 women in the United States at some time in her lifetime in our clinics. In Spokane, we started as Spokane Family Planning, and I have a date here that was
1967.
1967, and that was a group of concerned volunteers. And we later became Planned Parenthood of Spokane, and then we assumed a family planning clinic in Whitman County and became Planned Parenthood of Spokane and Whitman counties, and later grew into Planned Parenthood of the Inland Northwest, where we are responsible for, in our terms, the 9 northern counties of Idaho and the 8 easternmost counties of Washington.
Thank you. And Carrie, what about volunteers? What do your volunteers do?
Just a little bit of everything. Obviously, they cannot do medical procedures because they're not licensed as physicians or nurses, but they help with transportation. They do help us a great deal with medical records filing, and of course there's nothing but paperwork today, and they're a big help with that. They do data entry. They help with fundraising events. They may do help with the newsletter article. One of the big things that volunteers help with over here in North Idaho is we have a booth at the North Idaho Fair, and I have about 25 volunteers who work on that for the 5 days that the fair is going. In March of this year, we presented a play at on North Idaho College campus, and their two volunteers helped with handouts for that. And I have to jump in with the volunteers because it's so important. As CJ mentioned, we started in 1967 in Spokane totally with volunteers, and for the first 5 years of our existence, it was run entirely by dedicated volunteers. One woman's husband was a physician in Spokane, and he gave his wife the most unique Christmas gift I've ever heard of. He gave her 3 free vasectomies every month for 2 years that she then was able to give to patients at the first Spokane Family Planning Clinic. And I have yet to meet anybody who can top that as a gift.
That probably won't happen.
Probably not. And so these dedicated volunteers then for 5 years kept what became Planned Parenthood going and operating. And I just think that's a real testament to volunteers and their dedication.
Thank you.
Erna Reinhardt.
So we've heard a little bit about the history of your organization. You guys started back in the early 1950s, I think, as Planned Parenthood, I think, if that's correct. That's what I got off the website. Is that about right, 1952?
In 1942, the name was officially Planned Parenthood Federation of America. And I believe it was 1928 when Margaret Sanger founded the American Birth Control League.
Okay.
And then that later became what was known as Planned Parenthood Federation of America.
Awesome.
So we've been around for a long time.
CJ, tell us about the mission of Planned Parenthood and the array of services that you provide for people.
You know, our big goal is that every child is wanted and loved. And in a perfect society, families are able to plan and space their children, and every child is wanted and loved. Our component pieces for our goals to make that happen are we do education. We do education with parents because parents are always the best teacher of their children. We do education for those kids that you might call at risk, maybe disenfranchised. So we do education in places like the teen shelters, the group homes, the alcohol rehab kind of treatment centers where you might find young people, and some high-risk case management of children that you'd really like not to be sexually active. So education is part of what we do. We also train the trainers so that professionals who are teaching classes can learn from us what they need to know about healthy sexuality and healthy sex education, including, of course, abstinence, which is the best method and the only way to be free of disease and pregnancy. I mean, it's 100% all of the time. So education is part of our mission. Advocacy is part of our mission. We believe that family planning is important and that there should be family planning funds. We believe that the laws should be broad enough to allow women access to family planning services, so advocacy is another piece. But by far, our main service really is clinic time. We saw at Planned Parenthood in the Inland Northwest 16,930 individuals last year.
Wow.
We do cancer screening. We did very nearly 8,000 pap smears last year. We do follow-up on those pap smears. If somebody needs a repeat pap smear or a more complicated procedure, we do those in-house without federal or state funding because we're committed to that. Of course, we do birth control, and we do early trimester abortions. So our commitment is clinical services, education, and advocacy to our mission that every child is wanted and loved.
Excellent.
My question had to do with some statistics, and you certainly have indicated that you have a very large population or a clientele. We read a lot of statistics, and they go up and down in relation to all these things. Not only in Inland Northwest, but with your connections across the country, teen pregnancy is, I read something the other day that it has gone down some. Is that correct?
It absolutely is correct. As a matter of fact, one of the 2001 statistics I saw in Washington State that I thought was incredibly positive was there were less than 250 pregnancies in teens under 15 in the whole state.
What was the number again?
Less than 250.
Is that in Washington?
In Washington State. I wish I had the Idaho numbers, but I don't. I apologize for that. But, you know, it is going down. We think there is better education, better access to contraception, and yeah, that's a good thing all the way around. Yeah, that is excellent.
And Carrie, I know that you do a lot of education and booths where you have your literature and all this. How about sexually transmitted diseases, and with your education and others across the country doing this and in schools, sex education, are we getting a better grip on this problem? You know, there's been times when that has been rising and other times when it's been declining. So what are the status in different parts of the country?
Well, I'm sorry that I can't, excuse me, that I can't speak to that clearly as I would like to, Tony. One thing I would like to mention is that we now use the term, rather than sexually transmitted disease, the word disease is so onerous and scary for people that we use the term sexually transmitted infection. Many of these infections are curable if they're treated early. And so I'd like to stress that we do encourage that, and we encourage people who think they may be at risk to be tested for sexually transmitted infections, and we do provide that testing and treatment. And I would defer to CJ on the, as far as nationally what the statistics are showing with increase or decrease of those infections.
And what I have to say is, I wish I had the numbers for that, and I wish I would have thought to look at those numbers so I could give you more concrete data. But we do believe that there's an increase in those, particularly in young people, in the groups that really we'd rather see not sexually active at all. There's a rise in chlamydia, of course, which is problematic because it's asymptomatic. That is to say, there are no symptoms. The most common symptom of a sexually transmitted infection is no symptom, which is frightening, which means, of course, it can be passed. It's directly related to infertility problems, and certainly directly related to how many partners a person has in their lifetime. So we know that chlamydia is up, and again, I wish I had concrete numbers for you. We also know that gonorrhea is on the rise. Gonorrhea, of course, was rampant at the turn of the century. And gonorrhea is the reason why in newborns we put silver nitrate in their eyes, because it was so common at the turn of the century, and was incidentally decreased in the 50s with antibiotics that were used for sore throats and things like that, so it's pretty easy to cure. But we are seeing a rise again in gonorrhea. Certainly not in those turn of the century proportions, but a rise nevertheless.
And those infections where it, at least at the beginning, there's no signs of it. How are those detected? How does the individual protect themselves if that they may have that infection, but it's not detected? Are they tested, or what do you do to encourage people to know if they have a problem?
Well, we would encourage people to get tested. We would encourage people to be monogamous. That would be a really good choice.
That would be the best thing.
We would encourage people to use condoms 100%, certainly. But testing is pretty pain-free at the moment. The DNA testing for chlamydia is actually urine. Okay. So you can get tested without having to worry about the size of the swab if you're a male, or that awful pelvic position if you're a female, just by urination. It's 100% accurate, so it's DNA testing, and we do offer that at a pretty low price. Gonorrhea screening is not as accurate with that urine sample, but it is, I think, close to 90%. So,
but with a blood test, it would be 100%.
No, with a swab, it would be 100%, but not a blood test. The blood test really is for syphilis, which we aren't really seeing a whole lot of syphilis. I think in the clinic we've seen maybe 1 or 2 positives in a couple of years. That's not. Okay. We'd like to see none.
But that's good news that it's so low.
Yeah, we're still pretty low.
Yeah, Janelle. Yeah.
My next series of questions is going to be a short question, an answer to a short question. For example, what about fertility? Is fertility something that people would come to you to see about? And nationally, is Planned Parenthood doing something to encourage fertility for those couples who may be infertile?
We can do that nationally, and that varies by affiliate and from place to place. It's not something we do. We do refer out for people that have those concerns. That's just a step further than where we are right at the moment.
But you probably have educational materials along that line.
Yes.
Is that correct, Carrie?
We have educational materials on many health-related issues. For example, cigarette smoking and how that impacts fertility, how that impacts your general health, in addition to obvious materials such as menopause, menstruation,
so
generally accepted health areas.
And of course, healthy bodies make healthy children. Healthy bodies make healthy individuals, both healthy bodies and healthy mental attitudes as well. What about treatments for males as well as females? Is there a difference in your treatment, or do you accept males?
Oh yes, that's one of the big myths, is that we only see women. We do see males. We offer vasectomy as a service for men. We also do testicular cancer screening, and then for those who wish or need the STI testing or HIV testing, that is available for males as well as females.
So you see both men and women.
Exactly.
We do.
What about a presentation? I mean, how does a person go about making an appointment? Do they call Planned Parenthood? I'm sure you're in the telephone directory. Do they call? What do they do, and what's necessary for them to bring with them, or do they just bring themselves?
I believe, to interrupt you, we have on the screen, we'll put up right now a way to contact you too, if they'll put that up as you answer that question.
Great. Calling, absolutely, is the best way to go. We have a new website, ppiw.org, and in the future we hope to have appointments online so people don't even have to call. They could do that in the privacy of their own home in the evening. That is one of the things we're looking forward to doing. But calling our main office would let you schedule at any office. We are open generously, I think. In the Valley, we're open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. 4 days a week. From 7 to 3:30 on Wednesdays. We have Saturday hours at the Indiana Clinic. In our Pullman office, we're open till 7:30, 2 evenings a week. So calling and just bringing yourself. We never turn anybody away.
I don't believe that we have the telephone number. We had a website, but you might give the telephone number too.
Here in North Idaho, it is a toll-free number, 762
762-8099.
8099. And that rings directly to our main office in Spokane, and then that scheduler then can take a look at the, as CJ mentioned, not only the main clinic, but also the Valley Clinic.
But that 762-8099, would that also, from some place it'd be area code 208?
It would be 208.
Okay. And do you have one in Spokane?
326.
326.
2142.
Again, 326-2142, and it'd be area code 509.
Yes, it would.
Janelle, sorry to interrupt, but that wasn't on the line. Go right ahead.
And so those are the kinds of things that you just come then yourself, you bring yourself medical records if you have medical records, or be prepared to answer some questions.
When you would call to schedule an appointment, the scheduling person would do basic health history and determine what type of an appointment you needed, and then would get you all set up with whether you needed to have your medical records transferred, and that can be done, like many things now, electronically. But the scheduler would give you all of that information that you would need.
And you're handling adults. What is the youngest age that someone would come to Planned Parenthood?
In the state of Idaho, the youngest age somebody can seek reproductive health care is 14, independent of their parents. It's 14. In the state of Washington, it's actually much broader than that. It's of reproductive years. So that means when a young girl first starts to menstruate, she can access reproductive care. The reality is, we see mostly 20-somethings. We really do. There's a sort of a nice bell curve with a tail out both ways. We don't see very many people under 17. It's not that we can't, we just don't. I think our kids are smarter than we might suspect. And we don't see very many people over 35. So that's mostly who we see. But as far as the law, those are the laws in both states of who can seek care.
I have a two-part question, and I'll ask my first one to Carrie. And I always kind of bring up the youth on the show, so both of my questions are about young people. And the first thing I wanted to ask you is, I know that you guys have a teen advisory board.
We do.
So tell me, and I know that's really that's a powerful way to reach young people is through peers. So tell me about your teen advisory board.
Well, we are excited. We have some very dynamic young people, and they are varying ages. And at the moment, we do not have any teens from North Idaho on that board. We would be happy if anyone were interested. They could call and express that interest, and we'd love to have some Idaho representation on that. One of the things that our Teen Advisory Board did just recently was they did travel to Olympia in large numbers, and they met with legislators in Washington State. They were hoping to get a comprehensive sexuality education bill introduced and passed in Washington State that would have required that if a school district teaches sex ed, that the information be medically accurate. And the bill got a hearing this year. It did not go any farther than that. It did not pass. But the teens were excited. They were energized. Their knowledge was amazing to me, that how much they studied and read before they went. They had called ahead and made appointments with legislators. They came back energized, and those who are old enough to vote are going to be out there voting and participating. And I think we generally hear so much about the apathy of today's youth. And it just isn't true. There are a lot of kids that are interested and knowledgeable.
Carrie, how old do they need to be on that board?
There is
Typically?
no age
Okay.
limit on that.
Okay. Then my second question was for CJ. I understand that you guys have a new class that I think starts this month, maybe next month, that involves parents and children. So tell us about that. That sounds very interesting.
I have to interrupt to say by the time this airs, that will be over because this is not going to air till later. But anyway, we still can go ahead with.
Well, the point being, we believe parents are the best educators, as I said before, and we have begun to focus on giving parents the skills they need to have to talk to children about puberty, mood changes, body changes, those things, and then on into basic sex education, healthy sexuality, refusal skills, coercion, refusal skills, those kinds of things. The reasons why you shouldn't be drinking and all of those kinds of conversations that you should be having, because we do believe parents are the best educators. This is the first class we're having here in Coeur d'Alene, and we're certainly planning on having some more in the fall. But we've sort of lined out a couple of groups to target. So one of them is the parents, and the other again is the children who are at risk, which we are doing in shelters, and then we're doing the train the trainer model. So we're hoping that helps us address the concerns that all of us have about STIs and unintended pregnancy in our teens. So we think education is one of those answers.
Great.
We all learn from these programs, and Carrie in particular educated us to your new terminology when you're dealing with the issue of sexually transmitted infections. We'll try to remember that that's a better way of communicating. My question is I guess, trends and changes that take place in society. And I don't mean this to sound very negative, but in Europe, when we talk to our friends there, they say that they seem to be more free and willing to discuss human sexuality than we Americans. We've been very cautious about this over time. What are you finding on the scene today, like sex education in the schools and in your work and in your clinic and all? Are Americans changing a lot? Are they more willing to say that an educated person is more likely to be safe than one that's not well educated? Are we dealing with human sexuality better today than we have in the past?
Yes and no.
Yeah, I think,
it's a mixed bag.
Yeah, and I think particularly on the federal level, we're throwing huge amounts of money into unproven and abstinence only until straight and married education. And the reality is, if our young women are marrying at 28 and we're expecting abstinence that far, and what we're teaching them is fear-based, and what we're teaching them is only the failure rates of contraceptives, do we really in this country at this point in time believe that ignorance is power? And when did we decide that? The studies of countries where sex education is in the schools and it's part of everyday life, their numbers show that their teens put off being sexually active 2 years further than ours do. Their abortion rates in that group, and we would like never to do abortions in that group, are much lower than ours are. So,
are you saying education is empowering to?
I am suggesting that education and knowledge are power.
They are.
Yeah, absolutely.
But Carrie, you said also there's positive things going on in relation to my question. What are you encouraged about?
I think going back to Erna's question about the youth, the fact that I think more young people are being interested and taking the time and insisting upon being informed and insisting upon getting factual information. And our Teen Advisory Board is doing presentations. They are happy to go out and talk to other kids. And as you say, kids talking to kids, they will be more likely to listen to someone in their own age range than someone in my age range. I think your whole point, Tony, that Americans generally don't want to discuss sexuality. It's uncomfortable, and many parents want to feel that it's important. In fact, the majority of polls show that the majority of parents want their kids to have good, accurate sexual information. They assume that the schools are doing this, but that's not often the case. And many parents are a little hesitant. They're not quite sure if they're using the correct terminology, and so rather than give wrong information, they give no information. And we would feel strongly that, again, parents are the best educators, opening that dialogue. And if you don't know an answer, to say to your child, gosh, I don't know, but let's go find out. Let's go to the library. Let's call our doctor. Let's talk to our religious leader and see if maybe we can try to get an answer to this question.
Janelle Burt.
I want to talk in this round of questions about relationships with other organizations. For example, CJ, let's start with you. What about your relationship with your family doctor? How does Planned Parenthood fit into this scheme? Do you go to your family doctor and he refers you, or she refers you to Planned Parenthood, or do you go to Planned Parenthood, or are you on parallel tracks? How does that work?
Parallel tracks, I think, is really the best answer. If you look at what the group we serve, again, which primarily is women in their 20s, most of their needs are reproductive health. Most of what they're needing is pap smears, breast exams, those kinds of things, and those are services we provide. When we find somebody with a problem that would take a family practice physician, we have a pretty in-depth referral system, and we refer people out for those things that are not in our realm, because we're pretty specific.
And people don't come to you for the common cold.
People don't generally come to us for the common cold, it's true.
What about with health districts, Carrie? How do you relate to, in Idaho we have health districts, and they have a certain number of services that they offer to people. How do you relate to them? What kinds of things do you do they do, and how does that fit together?
Well, I think we have a good working relationship with the health districts. The 9 northern counties comprise the 2 health districts, Panhandle Health District and North Central, and I have gone around and visited each of those offices and know the directors and the nurse practitioners, and I think we work well together. Obviously, they cover everything, because not just reproductive health, we specialize in reproductive health. One of the things that I'm excited about that just happened last summer in working with Panhandle Health District is that we have a joint grant for colposcopy that we received from the 3 C's, and a colposcopy that is done by a trained clinician, and what it is, it's a magnified look at a woman's cervix.
On that note, we have to bring the criminal conclusion. Carrie, on this program, the clock always wins. It has never lost in history. But thank you both for being here, C.J. Gribble and Carrie Miller. It's been most informative, and we hope you'll come back at some time in the future. Ladies and gentlemen, we very much enjoyed bringing you this program, and I think it is extremely helpful to you. And with this, we are concluding a 3-week series on dealing with women's issues. And next week, we'll yet turn to another subject. As you know, on this program, we cover a great variety during a year. We hope you'll continue to watch. And until next week, please have a good week. I am Tony Stewart.
Recorded on the campus of North Idaho College, Public Forum is the longest-running in-house college production on PBS. Each episode is pre-recorded live and is an educational outreach from North Idaho College. Please join us at this same time next week for another edition of Public Forum on this Public Forum is pre-recorded live and is an educational outreach from North Idaho College. Please join us at this same time next week for another edition of Public Forum on this public television station.